What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Noah Gray here, tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Josh's channel and check out showmefootball.com for more.
What is up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com. And today I wanted to make a video about a potential addition that the Kansas City Chiefs could make to their pass rush here late in the offseason through trade. So this story has been developing over the past several weeks with star Vikings pass rusher Danielle Hunter. He wants an extension from the Minnesota Vikings, or he's just not happy with his situation there. And he is skipping mandatory minicamp as we speak. And because of this, the Minnesota Vikings have started fielding trade calls on Danielle Hunter. And Danielle Hunter is actually a guy that there was a little bit of rumors about him last offseason. It was never super realistic. We did throw his name around for the Kansas City Chiefs a little bit last offseason as someone that we could potentially trade for. But it's more realistic this time around, and it's also a little bit easier financially for the Kansas City Chiefs to acquire him. He's only due $5.5 million this year. Now, as I said in my last video when I reacted to the Frank Clark signing and how the Chiefs were never going to retain him because of how much the Broncos gave him, I talked about how the Kansas City Chiefs really don't have any cap space right now. They have to make a move first, whether it's extending Chris Jones or restructuring somebody's contract, because right now they only have like $1 million in cap space. It's really not much at all. It's not really enough to even sign anyone to a veteran minimum contract. So in order to actually make a Danielle Hunter trade realistic, the Chiefs will have to free up some cap space somehow, or throw a little bit more valuable of a draft pick towards Minnesota, so they're paying essentially nothing for Danielle Hunter next year. That's probably not super realistic, though. He's already not making that much. So realistically, the Chiefs are just going to have to free up some cap space. But if they're able to, I would love for the Kansas City Chiefs to target Danielle Hunter. He would be the perfect veteran addition to this pass rush. So with Frank Clark being off the board, that was a name that a lot of Chiefs fans wanted to see brought back. I was ready to move on from him, but I'm still not against the idea of adding a veteran pass rusher to this group. I really like what the Kansas City Chiefs already have. They also added some youth and some talent. But getting one more guy in there that can potentially start for you and has that experience in the NFL, that's an attractive thing to me, because I like what George Karlaftis gives you. I'm not sure that he has a defensive end one ceiling, but he could be a very high-end number two, at least this year. That's kind of what I see him as a high-end number two in the right situation. If you bring in Danielle Hunter, who can be a number one, because Danielle Hunter had 10.5 sacks last year, that's a really good starting defensive end group. And then you have Charles Omenihu behind them, who can still take some snaps inside, so you're not really blocking him. And then you got a veteran like Danielle Hunter, who's very good to help bring Felix Anudike-Uzomah along, who I still think will get a lot of playing time as a rookie, but this way there's not so much pressure on him to produce right away. And the other reason that I would really be interested in bringing in Danielle Hunter on this Kansas City Chiefs team is the dude is just an absolute stud. And adding him would give you a situation, or honestly, this would be the best Chiefs pass rush, at least on paper, of the Patrick Mahomes era. Like, are you kidding me? Chris Jones, Danielle Hunter, Charles Omenihu, George Karlaftis, Felix Anudike-Uzomah, like Mike Dana, who's really solid. Like, that is a damn good pass rush. And you look at a lot of the teams that have either won or made the Super Bowl over the last several years. Just this past season, the Philadelphia Eagles had the best pass rush in the league. The Kansas City Chiefs were second in the league in sacks. But I still think they can improve, at least on paper, from the pass rush that they had this past season. I think Danielle Hunter would be an upgrade over a guy like Frank Clark. You look at the season before that, the Los Angeles Rams. They had Aaron Donald, Leonard Floyd, Von Miller. They won the Super Bowl. Go back to Super Bowl 54, the first one that the Chiefs won in the Mahomes era. The Chiefs' pass rush was good enough to get the job done that year, but you look at the other side of the ball in the San Francisco 49ers, that was a fearsome pass rush. And getting Danielle Hunter would, at least for me, put this pass rush in a tier where those other teams rank. Like that, like just all sorts of names, all sorts of guys that can just absolutely get after it. You would have added so much athleticism to this pass rush and bendiness and just so much potential and just a higher ceiling than any pass rush you've had in the Mahomes era, quite frankly. You look at those teams, like I mentioned, like the Eagles and the Niners, and they just got guys on top of guys that can rush the passer. Eagles, for example, Hassan Reddick, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, all those guys. If the Chiefs were to add Danielle Hunter, man, that would be guys on top of guys. Like, you have a Defensive Player of the Year finalist in Chris Jones, a guy that had 6.5 sacks as a rookie in George Karlaftis, who we think can take a step forward. Some really good younger guys behind him in Felix Anudike-Ozama and Charles Omenihu. And again, Charles Omenihu I think is a super underrated signing. I'm excited to see what he brings to the table. Had a really good win rate last year, a good pass rush win rate, and he can rush from the inside. And that means there's plenty of snaps available still for a guy like Danielle Hunter to come in here. And Danielle Hunter is the perfect defensive end that I want to see. He'd be an upgrade over Frank Clark because the pass rush is so much better. Maybe not as quite as good against the run, but he can still give you some good snaps against the run. He's a very, very strong player. He's 6'5", 265 pounds, kind of fits that Spags threshold. I know the Chiefs showed in this past draft that they're willing to break outside of that Spags threshold, thanks Joe Cullen. But they should still add a guy like Danielle Hunter, and I'm sure Joe Cullen would like to add a guy like Danielle Hunter. The concern last time around with potentially adding Danielle Hunter, one, no one knew if he was truly available. It was just more of a pipe dream, really. And then also he had a much higher cap hit than he does this year. And also there were some injury concerns. In 2021, he had only played in 7 games. And he had a neck injury, I think it was, which of those, you got to be careful. But this past year in 2022, played all 17 games, was a Pro Bowler, just a really good year for him. And so the question is, why would the Vikings be looking to sell on him? He could just not be happy with his situation there. It looks like he's kind of holding out. Maybe he wants an extension. The question would be if the Chiefs traded for him, would they be willing to extend Danielle Hunter? Maybe, maybe not. But usually in these situations where a guy maybe wants a new contract, like look at Orlando Brown, for example, when the Chiefs traded for him, you can acquire those guys and they'll be willing to play out the year for you and then maybe hit free agency or, something. But usually guys that aren't happy with their contract situation with one team once they're traded, they're just kind of like, I was happy to get out of there. I'll play for you just for this year, So it could be sort of a rental deal for Danielle Hunter if the Chiefs traded for him, but I don't think he would cost very much. I think you're looking at a 5th or maybe a 4th round draft pick. Not super expensive. But adding a player like Danielle Hunter, and at this stage of the offseason too, it would be a big splash. Like I would consider that to be a big splash. We're talking about a player that had 10.5 sacks last year and was one of the better pass rushers in the league. And he's one of the better pass rushers in the league as long as he's healthy. And one more note I'd like to add on Danielle Hunter just as a player if the Chiefs were to trade for him. When the Chiefs first acquired Frank Clark several years ago, the idea was to pair him up, with Chris Jones and give Chris Jones a star pass rushing partner. And Frank Clark was never really that. He was okay at times, pretty mediocre, pretty disappointing. He was never that true number 2, that star that could take advantage of playing next to Chris Jones. Danielle Hunter would be that guy. Like that would be a star lined up next to Chris Jones. And we haven't really had that since Chris Jones has been on the Chiefs. Not since his rookie year when they had Dee Ford and Justin Houston when he was still a really good player. So I would really love to see Danielle Hunter for all those reasons, guys. And it looks like he's headed for turmoil. Right now in Minnesota, the Vikings are fielding trade calls. So it's not impossible. They would just have to free up some cap space first, but this is a deal that I would love to see the Chiefs make. I think the Chiefs still have a need for a veteran pass rusher, but I want to hear from you guys what your thoughts are on potentially acquiring Danielle Hunter from the Vikings. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments. Do you think it's possible? Would you like to see it? Let me know. But with all that being said, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this. And make sure you check out my work on showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com. And I will see you all in the next one. Go Chiefs!